Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. In this episode, I am going to do another audio journal format, and it's simply due to the fact that I'm still pretty much getting caught up from being away at PodFest in Orlando, Florida, now 2 weeks ago. I shared in episode 806 that I came back from Orlando with a second round of whatever the cough / severe cold / minor case of the flu that I had. You can probably hear in my voice, I sound much better as far as energy levels. I am feeling much better. And there's only just the slightest little tickle that's left over. However, much of my healing and just recovery process has been making sure that I am not overexerting myself and allowing myself to get plenty of rest, which means that there's only been 2 mornings in the past 2 weeks where I've got up at 4:30 in the morning and had those first few hours of the day for the most incredible morning routine. I believe that tomorrow may be the return of that routine on a consistent, ongoing basis. And if that's the case, I'm happy to project that I might just get to the place where I'm not questioning the idea of the fact that I had made a commitment to 2 weekly shows, guaranteed new episodes every single week. Podcast Answer Man every Friday at 12:01 a.m. and the Cliff Ravenscraft Show here every Monday at 12:01 a.m. It seems that these past 2 weeks, I have been right pretty close to the deadline. In this case, tonight, I am under 4 hours from the published date. So I'm literally recording this on Sunday, February 1st at 6:07 p.m. And so less than 4 hours from now, this is due to go out. And that's just the result of all of the items in my to-do list and all of the follow-ups from PodFest and the fact that I've been sleeping until about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And I've been giving myself lots of rest to sleep during the day when I need to take a little bit of a nap, because I just wanted to give myself that time to heal. I feel like I'm probably on the edge of where that's no longer going to be an issue. So with that being said, I am up against the time crunch once again, and I'm praying, I am planning for, and I am predicting that I will be up at 4:30 every morning for the rest of this week. And if that's the case, while there's still lots of things for me to do and many projects that I'm committed to working on in my business and in also my personal life, I still should have the ability to get back to what I anticipate will be my production schedule. So for example, Podcast Answer Man, the next episode should be recorded on Tuesday morning. And that means that episode will be recorded, edited, and scheduled for release at 12:01 a.m. on Friday before I do any of my scheduled calls on Tuesday. And then the Cliff Ravenscraft Show, next week's episode of this podcast, should be recorded this Thursday morning. Recorded, edited, and scheduled for release for next Monday. That has been the goal ever since I set the commitment to be here each week. I said I will record Podcast Answer Man on Tuesday, and I will record the Cliff Ravenscraft Show on Thursday. And it's just because of, just the being behind, not being well, that those things kept getting pushed back right up until it's like, oh, okay, I can't push it back anymore if I'm going to live up to that commitment. But we'll see how this week goes. I'm anticipating great things. But because I'm doing an audio journal format once again. And I, just because of all of those things, I decided to title this episode, Things Capturing My Attention Lately. And I'm sharing with you just off the top of my head about some of these things. The first one is a pretty big deal. I was invited back to speak at Social Media Marketing World for Social Media Marketing World 2026. Not only am I speaking at Social Media Marketing World, I'm doing a 90-minute workshop. This will be the third time that I am doing a 90-minute workshop. And the great thing about 90-minute workshops at Social Media Marketing World, there are not as many concurrent sessions or concurrent options for you to go and attend. There's only a certain number of workshops that are available, and anyone who is coming on that first day of the 3-day event to attend these workshops, which are highly valuable, sought-after stage opportunities for those of us who are industry leaders and thought leaders and experts in our field, because there's a large chance that it will have a much larger turnout as far as the room size and the audience that's there to participate. That, of course, is working under the anticipation that the session title and description is appealing to the particular people who are going to be in attendance at these workshops that day. I did a little research to see what my history has been with Social Media Marketing World. For those of you who might not know, Social Media Marketing World is an annual conference that is put together by a company called Social Media Examiner. Social Media Examiner was founded by my friend Michael Stelzner. And Mike Stelzner has been in a weekly mastermind group with myself and Pat Flynn, Ray Edwards, Mark Mason, Leslie Samuel. Did I miss anybody else? Let's see. There's myself, Mike, Leslie, Ray, Mark Mason, and me. So I'm like, there's 6. Where's the other person? It's like, oh, it's me. So anyway, we've been in a mastermind group together for a very long time. And I am very honored to have watched this event, Social Media Marketing World, from its inception, from its idea stage. And to see what it's grown into over the years has been fascinating. Now, thankfully, because of my relationship with Mike Stelzner and his awareness of my position in the space and industry of podcasting, I've been very blessed to have had the opportunity to speak at this illustrious industry conference for many years. In fact, the first year of Social Media Marketing World was 2013. And I spoke at every single event for the first 8 years of Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, California. That's from 2013 all the way up to 2020. Now, I remember that final event before the pandemic because it was, I think, March of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and pretty much the entire world shut down. They did the whole global lock-in stuff just weeks after we returned from Social Media Marketing World 2020. Anyway, Social Media Marketing World did not have an event in San Diego in 2021. They postponed the event. Anybody who had tickets already purchased for that year, they were automatically going to be honored for the following year in 2022. Now, it turns out that I actually have missed 2 Social Media Marketing Worlds since the pandemic. I skipped the 2022 event. This was due to the fact that well, I don't want to go into too many details, but I am one of the people who chose not to get a vaccine. I did get COVID. I was treated. And as a result of that, I felt like I didn't need to get this vaccine. And so because of that, there was a lot of concern about whether or not in 2022 you would be allowed to travel without showing proof of vaccination. There was also the idea that you would have to be on these airplanes all day, every day, and walking through these airports with a mask on. And then you'd be pretty much expected to have a mask on and also maybe even social distance at the event. And not to mention the fact that international travel wasn't really much of a thing. And there were just so many other elements. And not to mention the fact that, as I said, I got pretty sick with COVID and had experienced some issues over the years that I haven't talked about a lot publicly, but I did experience some things. And so I skipped 2022. I did go back in 2023, but it was the first year I went to San Diego for Social Media Marketing World, but did not speak. And it was different. It felt odd. Now, I wasn't upset. I know that the one thing that Michael and his team had to do during that period of time was to kind of cut down and pare back the sessions to the core of what social media marketing is, which is basically highly focused marketing strategy for marketing professionals, social media agencies, digital marketers, all of that stuff. And for the first 8 years, there were, for many of those years, what was called a content creator track. And content creator tracks had a lot of sessions related to podcasting and YouTube. And while they didn't have like a podcast, they covered things like TikTok and other influencers and stuff like that. So there was a content creator track, and I think if I remember correctly, there was even a content creator ticket. And so it was almost like a replacement for what was available back in the day with Blog World / New Media Expo. So when the pandemic hit and after things came back, the attendance, obviously with all events, was much smaller than they were prior to the pandemic. And as a result of that, the core audience was this, and there was no more content creator track. And that's why there wasn't as much for, hey, let's talk about podcasting, let's talk about YouTube, let's talk about these content creators for content creators. They were still doing content. They were still doing podcasts / YouTube / Instagram type sessions, but with people who are devoted full time to being a digital marketing expert or whatever, if you get what I'm saying. So I didn't anticipate, and I certainly have never felt any expectation, just because I'm Mike's friend, that I should be given an opportunity to speak if I'm coming out to Social Media Marketing World. Didn't even ask, but it did feel different because there were still many of the speakers in 2023 who I happen to know, because I went to the speaker party every single year for those first 8 years. And many of the speakers are peers of mine. And it did feel a little odd going to Social Media Marketing World and knowing that there was this speaker party, and it was the first time attending that event in San Diego where I wasn't a part of that party. That felt different. Not bad, just different. And then let's see here. In 2024, I ended up skipping San Diego Social Media Marketing World that year as well. So again, in 2021, they postponed the event to 2022. I did not go to 2022. I went to 2023. And then I skipped 2024, but not because it felt weird in 2023. I skipped 2024 because, once again, I don't want to go into any details, but I was experiencing some things in my own health and fitness, and I didn't feel that traveling all the way out to San Diego, dealing with whatever it is I was dealing with, was a good idea. And so I felt, let's stay at home. If anything happens, that's the right place for me to be. Thankfully, over the course of the next year, things started to really turn around and a lot of healing took place. And I'm happy to say that ever since then, I've felt pretty good. In fact, I felt great enough to go all the way back out to San Diego in 2025, last year. And I'm thrilled that I went. But once again, I didn't speak. I didn't ask to speak. Now, keep in mind that in 2023 and in 2025, my focus for my identity online, for what I want to be known for, and my public messaging had nothing to do with Podcast Answer Man. These are during the years where I had fully transitioned away from my identity as the Podcast Answer Man. And so I was primarily focused on Mindset Answer Man. Now, before the pandemic, I'll go back to that for just a moment. Remember, the size of the conference was much larger. And as a result of that, there were lots more attendees prior to the pandemic. And because of that, there were lots more seats to fill. And so they had more sessions that you could have as options to spread things out throughout the convention center. And because of that, even though I was not known as the Podcast Answer Man at the time, I was given the opportunity to do sessions on non-podcast related topics. So I'm looking here. Did I only do one? Okay. So there's only one. It was in 2020, right before the pandemic. I did a 90-minute workshop, and it was titled Developing an Empowering Mindset, How to Overcome Barriers to Your Success. And I am looking here. I see that in 2013, my session was titled How to Launch a Podcast, What You Need to Know to Get Started. 2014, 6 reasons why podcasting is the best investment for building your platform. Let's see here. 2015, how to use a podcast to become a dominant expert in your niche. 2016, I did a 90-minute workshop in 2016, podcasting workshop, everything you need to know to launch and grow a successful podcast. 2017, equipment workflow, professional podcasting simplified. 2018, how to build a responsible and profitable online business around your podcast. So, okay, there it is. So 2018, this is the first time that I was able to do the pivot to business strategy and mindset. But it was still under the guise of, hey, so you have a podcast? Come to my session, and I'm going to tell you how you can use your podcast and create a responsible and profitable online business strategy around your podcasting efforts. 2019, the title was The Business of Podcasting, How to Generate Significant Income from Your Content. And again, you notice I had the keyword podcasting in there, even though it's really business strategy and mindset around your podcast. And then in 2020, Mike just gave me the carte blanche. He says, dude, you want to do a workshop on mindset? And that's where developing an empowering mindset, how to overcome the barriers to your success. So those were those 3 years where even though I'm not publicly communicating I'm the Podcast Answer Man and talking about that, because again, there was a season of my life where I really wanted to get out of the typecasting, if you will, of being known as that guy. And just for the record, in December of last year, 2025, I made the decision to turn that back on. I have unretired the Podcast Answer Man brand, and I have been actively working towards letting people know that I'm available to speak again on the topic of podcasting, and it's okay to announce me to the world as the podcast answer man, as a go-to trusted resource when it comes to all things podcasting, because it is a perfect top of funnel, and I'm able to then take all of those people who come to me and filter for and discern who are the people on the entrepreneurial path that would likely also benefit if we went deeper into business strategy and mindset. So anyway, but after the pandemic, like I said, things were smaller. And as a result of that, it did not make sense to try to fit in a mindset talk or a mindset session in the 2 years that I did attend in, 2023 and 2025. So I didn't ask Mike to speak. I wasn't asked to speak. And it's probably mostly to the fact that I had not had that moniker of Podcast Answer Man, and maybe a lot of other, again, ancillary factors related to what sessions and space was available based upon how many people are anticipated to come given post-COVID conference attendance overall, not just at Social Media Marketing World, but just in live event industry space altogether. So, like I said, went last year, didn't speak, but boy, did I have a great time last year. It didn't feel as weird as 2023 because I had already gone and didn't go to the speaker party. But last year, what was unique is that before the conference started, the night before the conference started, my friend Jessica Phillips, now her name's Jessica Suter, she invited me to a pre-party that she hosted, and it had a lot of the speakers there. And so while it wasn't the official speaker party, there were plenty of speakers there that I connected with, and it kind of had that vibe, and it was great to connect with those fellow speakers and all of that stuff. And just overall had a great time. I was back in San Diego again. What's not to like? But here we are coming up on 2026. And because I brought back Podcast Answer Man back in December of last year, I told Mike, I said, listen, I know you've already got things lined up for Social Media Marketing World. I just want you to know one of my goals, one of my dreams for 2026 is to do more speaking. And if I was to list out some of my preferred speaking opportunities that I would love to land, one of them would be to speak again at Social Media Marketing World. But I don't want you to feel any pressure at all to invite me. But I just want to let you know I'm available to speak if any certain situation seems to present itself. And he said, thank you, Cliff. I'll take that under consideration. And I said, sure thing. I said, and that goes all the way up until the day of the event. I'm coming anyway. And so if we get there and it's, let's just say 3 hours before a session is supposed to start, and you get a text from the person and they said, hey, I'm stuck at the airport at a layover and my flight just got canceled. I'm not going to be there in time, whatever, last minute, if it's 20 minutes till that session goes live, it doesn't matter. Put me on the stage, put me in, coach. I will take that spot. And it's like, Cliff, I appreciate that. And of course, by the way, another thing that I did in 2025 and 2023 is I spent the entire day, every day of the event, serving the attendees. I went to the Social Media Marketing World Facebook group for the community who are attendees, people who have registered, they've got their tickets, and I made an invitation. I did an introduction of who I am, the experience that I have, and I said I'm offering free 90-minute sessions to anyone who's interested. And I scheduled several of those and had some incredibly powerful conversations with people, to say the very least. And I know that did not go unnoticed. And and by the way, the big thing is going to Social Media Marketing World every year. It's not just about the speaking. it's the one time each year since 2013 that all of us from the Green Room Mastermind gather together just a couple hours after the final closing keynote. We go out to get dinner together. That's an annual thing we do. Once again, it felt weird in 2022 and 2024 to miss that annual gathering of our mastermind group, in person. But anyway, back on January 29th, I got a message from Mike, and he's like, hey, if you're still available, I would love to invite you. Would you be interested in doing a workshop on the topic of podcasting this year at Social Media Marketing World? And I immediately said, yes, I would. And so we have worked it all out. My session is going to be titled Creating an Influential Podcast That Captures Attention and Compounds Trust. And the goal is for the title and its description to really be attractive to those professional digital marketers, those people who run digital marketing agencies, or people who are professional social media managers, and also the solopreneurs, entrepreneurs who are also attending the event, who are looking for the best strategies to get in front of their ideal clients and customers using social media and other marketing related tools and services. So here's what the description of the workshop says. Podcasting remains one of the most powerful ways to build trust and influence with an audience. Yet many marketers feel overwhelmed by the technical details or unsure how podcasting fits into a broader content strategy. In this 90-minute workshop, you'll learn how to design a podcast with intention, clarity, and purpose, even if you have never recorded a single episode before. This session begins with a simple confidence-building overview of podcasting fundamentals, including equipment, publishing, episode frequency, and distribution. From there, you'll explore the different podcast formats available today, from ongoing shows to seasonal and limited series podcasts, and learn how to choose the right approach based upon your goals. By the end of the workshop, you will have a clear understanding of how podcasting can function as a strategic communication tool. You'll leave with practical guidance, a framework for choosing the right podcast format, and clarity about how a well-designed podcast can serve as a powerful asset in your marketing ecosystem. So that's one thing that's been on my mind. As a result of that, I had already told Stephanie that it's in Anaheim, California this year. It's the first time we're not going to be in San Diego. That will be different. Now, this will be my second time to Anaheim, California, right there next to Disneyland. Podcast Movement happened to have an event in Anaheim a couple of years ago, and I went out for that particular event and spent an extra day or so. And one of those days I spent at Disneyland and whatever that thing is called across from Disneyland. Yeah, it's California Adventure or something like that. Anyway, lots of fun. And I decided that this year I'm going to take Stephanie with me. Well, Stephanie and I got to talking, and she's like, I think maybe it's probably best that I don't go this year. And we had a conversation about all of the reasoning and stuff like that. And while I'm a little bummed that she's not going to go to Disneyland, and I did not do my customary extra bonus day at the beginning and or end for this year, I understand her reasoning, and we decided that I will be going out alone. So that's going to be a little odd because in my mind, I had already anticipated, whether I was speaking or not, that Stephanie and I are going to Anaheim, California together, and we would certainly spend at least one day at Disneyland. And so I don't know, that there could be a possibility that some things might change. I might be able to convince her. I already have my flight booked. My hotel will be taken care of by a Social Media Examiner. So who knows? I could definitely see myself potentially adding an extra airline ticket round trip to bring Stephanie with me. We'll see. But right now, the idea is that I'll be going myself, and I'll be arriving the day before day one, and I will leave the afternoon after the final day of the conference. Not necessarily a lot of opportunity for me to head out to Disneyland for a day. Although I was saying that, if I did everything on day one, I don't want to miss the opportunity for day two to walk the hallways after I've had, potentially more than 100 people or a couple hundred people potentially even in my workshop. I'd really like to make myself available during that day. So I don't know. It feels weird to go all the way out to the West Coast and not do Disneyland. And then it would even feel doubly weird if I made any attempt to do a second trip to Disneyland and not have my wife there. So I may have to do some work on convincing her to maybe head out. And if so, potentially changing my flight date. Anyway, anything's possible. Anyway, those are things. That's one thing that's been capturing my attention lately, is that opportunity. The next thing on my list here in my outline that has captured my attention this past week is that already there was an email from PodFest saying speaker submissions for PodFest 2027 are now open. Click here to submit your talk to see if you might be chosen to speak at PodFest 2027. So I'm like, okay, I wasn't anticipating. So by the way, just imagine, this opportunity for social media marketing world came up this past week, and of course, there's choosing flights, there is choosing arrival times, there's choosing the topic, there's coming up with the title, getting it approved, getting the description put together, even having a good outline for that talk. All of that was not planned for when I started the week, but yet social media marketing world, it took up, I would say, somewhere between 2 to 4 hours of this week. And then I wasn't planning anything for submitting a talk to PodFest 2027, but that opportunity came up as well. And I probably put about 2 or 3 hours related to deciding how am I going to create a topic that would get me the same kind of results that I had this year. A topic that would hook the attendees, it would attract those who are more on the entrepreneurial path, but not be exclusive to those who are not interested in business around their podcasting. How can I pull this off that it will be open to everyone, appealing to everyone, but certainly anyone who is an entrepreneur is going to resonate with this? Well, here's my title: 5 Strategic Shifts that help an established podcast evolve. One of the things that I like about this is that, hey, there are going to be 5 strategic shifts that will help you as an established podcaster evolve. Now, this speaks to those who think about strategies. This speaks to people who have an established podcast. It's not exclusive of anyone who's just getting started or haven't ever launched yet their first episode, but I am wanting those who have already put in the time, put in the effort. They've shown up consistently, and whether they have 50 episodes or 5,000 episodes, you're probably looking at some strategies to evolve your podcast. And here's the description, if that captures their attention. It says, many podcasters reach a point where their show is consistent, established, and respected, yet no longer feels fully aligned with who they are or where they want to go next. This session explores 5 strategic shifts that experienced creators make when a podcast outgrows its original design. You will learn how long-running shows evolve without abandoning their audience, their identity, or their publishing rhythm. These shifts often involve changes in intention, focus, and how the podcast relates to both the creator and the listener. This talk is designed for experienced podcasters who sense that their show was built for an earlier season and are ready to intentionally evolve it for what comes next. So that is a second thing that was on my mind this week. They were capturing my attention, if you will. And now, as I am, about 30 or so minutes into this episode, I'm recognizing my throat is very dry. I need to go up and get something to drink, and I'm going to come back down and continue this episode in just a moment. And I'm back. And I'm going to apologize in advance because I have a cough drop in my mouth. I just drank a bunch of water, trying to lubricate my throat. And I don't think I'll make it through the rest of this episode without some sort of throat lozenge to keep that. Anyway, I apologize. That's all I'm saying. So where was I? That was third, what do we call this thing that was capturing my attention this week? So many ways to get paid today. I have created a bullet point outline of just my thoughts on this. And the fact that for an online business owner, when I started my own online business, went full-time self-employed in January 2008. But I started by paid products and services going all the way back to 2006. And back in those days, charging people money and having them pay you was very inconvenient. It was very challenging. In fact, back in the early days, unless you had a merchant account, you were pretty much relegated to either using PayPal payments or taking people's money via ACH or check account transfers. It was a little wonky at best. And also, I don't think really led it to a lot of credibility and just your reputation. I don't think it's a great first impression when somebody wants to hire you and then you ask, can you pay me via PayPal because I don't have a way of taking credit cards. That was a conversation I had back in those early days. And it all changed when finally one day I happened to be introduced to somebody who was introduced to me by my friend Dan Miller. And this person ended up being a very key person in my life, somebody who had a significant amount of impact and influence in my life, and somebody I developed a very close relationship with over the next several years. But I almost lost him as a client when he wanted to buy some equipment from me and he wanted to pay via credit card. And I said, well, can you pay by checking account instead? And he's like, well, what does that mean? I said, all you have to do is read me your routing number and your check account number and give me verbal authorization to transfer the money from your checking account to mine. And I can do this by phone. He goes, that sounds sketchy, Cliff. I don't know that I really want to do that. You know what? Let me think this over. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'm going to find a way to take credit cards. Give me a bit. And so that's when I did some research and I found that there was a solution. By the way, even back then, I could have done what was called a merchant account. But I was still doing this as a hobby. Again, this is before I went full-time self-employed. And so this was probably about mid-2006, 2007. I don't remember. It was somewhere around there. But I ended up finding a solution that allowed me to take credit card payments, and I could process them through PayPal without it looking like you were paying me through PayPal. Eventually, they came up with a service to allow this called Website Payments Pro. It was called PayPal Website Payments Pro. And then you could hook that up to FreshBooks, and basically you just send them an invoice, and FreshBooks says, click here to pay. And they had a user interface that just basically processed your payment through PayPal Website Payments Pro. It was super wonky back in the day, but it was better than having a merchant account, because I just remember, to get a merchant account, you had to have an official business set up, which, remember, this is before I started my business, so I did not have a business federal ID. I didn't have business credit history. And not only that, but merchant accounts were incredibly expensive, and I was still kind of doing this as a hobby. And so, thankfully, there were some solutions, such as PayPal Website Payments Pro and FreshBooks. And then along came all sorts of other opportunities. In fact, I was using FreshBooks going all the way through 2016. It was January 10th, 2016. That's when I signed up with Kajabi. And Kajabi says, hey, we process payments, but we do that, and we're integrated with something called Stripe. And I had heard a lot about Stripe, but I didn't think that it was something that I was going to be able to figure out back in the day, because you had to find a way to integrate it with some sort of things via their APIs into a website. And I wasn't a very avid web developer, and so I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Well, when Kajabi came out, it's like, they have all of this integration built in. They've already got offers, they've got a checkout system, and it's all built into your website. It's got your branding on it, and they will automatically do all of the integration, collect the payments, all of the stuff. I'm like, this is pretty cool. The setup with Stripe was super simple. And ever since 2016, that's what I've been using for all of my credit card payments with clients. It has been primarily through Stripe using Kajabi. Now, since then, a lot of other services have come around, but it's been primarily that. I do have, oddly enough, I have one-on-one coaching client who prefers to pay me through Venmo. I went and created a Venmo account just for that purpose. But before that, it was either you could pay me via PayPal, you could pay me via wire transfer. Now, that's always been available. And that is less sketchy, I think, than asking somebody to read you their routing number and their checking account number and giving you an amount and just giving you verbal authorization. Although I did quite a few of those payments back in those early days. But the reason why this had captured my attention today is that I had a client who recently decided they were going to join the Next Level Mastermind. And there's an opportunity to save $3,000 if you pay in full instead of paying monthly payments over the course of the next year. And there was an opportunity that made sense for this individual to pay me in full using a brand new card that came in. And the card wasn't going to be there right away, but there was going to be this ability to pay via Apple Pay and pay a large payment up front. I was, okay, great, no worries. The only thing is, though, is my Kajabi/Stripe integration, and also Stripe has web invoicing as well. I couldn't figure out how to send an invoice via Stripe where you could pay via Apple Pay. Now, Kajabi, a couple years ago, came up with their own thing called Kajabi Payments. And they do have the ability with Kajabi Payments to pay via Apple Pay. But I never moved over to that system, and I wasn't going to move over to that system just for this one thing. So I began looking online. I'm like, hey, what are some other ways for me to receive payments that might take Apple Pay? And one of the options that was available was QuickBooks Online has an invoicing feature. I'm like, well, gosh, I've been a QuickBooks user ever since I started my business. So I went in, and sure enough, my account is already activated with invoicing. And so I went in and set up an invoice, and I looked at it, and sure enough, it says, what payments do you want to make available? One was credit card, and the other one was ACH. And I said, well, I'd like to offer those two different options. She could pay via checking account if she wants to, or she can pay via credit card. And it had the Apple Pay symbol on it. I'm like, very cool. I sent that invoice over, and I just received my very first credit card payment that came through as an Apple Pay payment inside of my QuickBooks invoicing. Ironically, QuickBooks invoicing was much simpler than going into doing Stripe invoicing. Actually, it's not. They're about as easy. However, it was nice to have Apple Pay as an option. And I've heard people say that if Apple Pay is an option, there's a higher close rate on people who make payments. And I'm sure that has a lot more to do with e-commerce than the kind of stuff that I'm doing. My clients have already made the decision to pay my invoice when they've asked me to send them an invoice. But anyway, it did change some things for me. So I went in and sent this invoice, and the payment came in, and it's so different than how I'm used to getting credit card payments from Stripe. So whenever I had a payment come in from Stripe, I log into my Stripe account, and the payment shows right in there. It shows the transaction. Here's the amount. Here's the payment processing fee. And here's the amount that is available for you to deposit into your bank account. And it's usually got a 1 to 2 day hold on it. And after 1 to 2 days, then you can transfer the amount. And there's also all the payment services out there have the instant transfer option for anywhere between like 1% or 1.75%. I'm like, listen, I don't need that money that bad. You hold on to it for a day or two. Then let's get it over to my checking account. But in Stripe, I would see, hey, Cliff, you've got this balance of this much money that's been paid via all of these credit card payments. And then I'm like, okay, I want to transfer money from this into my business checking account. That's how I've always done things ever since I started using Kajabi back in 2016. But inside of QuickBooks Online, it's not like that. There's not some sort of QuickBooks payments account that shows me my balance in there that I could just sit. And then when it gets up to a certain amount, I'm like, you know what? Let me go over and make a request to move that from my QuickBooks payments account over to my checking account for my business. That's not how it works. It's just logged as a payment received, and it's just kind of I had to dig for it. I had to find this section. In fact, I'm going to go into QuickBooks and just tell you the name of what I had to what I found. And I was using the AI tools and everything to try to help navigate. It's like, where's this money? It says this payment has been made, and I was confident that the payment was and the money's available. However, even though the account says, this amount has been paid, where's it at? How do I go in and tell it to deposit it into my checking account? It doesn't show a ledger like all of my other bank accounts. So, for example, I even have a ledger for my Stripe accounts inside of here so that it's all documented inside of my system. I manually enter that. Actually, I use Zapier to get the transactions that come in via Stripe and automatically go in. But there's a checking account ledger, but there's not for these QuickBooks payments. And so I finally bookmarked it. It's called QuickBooks Payouts. And so there's a section in here where it says deposits from QuickBooks payments. And it's got batch date. It's got the date on here. It's got the amount. It shows the fee that was taken out, the number of transactions. And then it says status, and it says deposit expected. And so I click on that, and then it shows me it says deposit expected to arrive on 2/2/26. Now, this payment just came in earlier this morning on 2/1/26. So it's a 1-day wait from the date the credit card payment is received until it gets deposited into my account. But there's no place, even though it says here, it says deposits from payments, it doesn't say you have this balance. In fact, it just basically is what it's telling me is that there's money in here and this is the amount that was received. Here's the fee for the processing of the receipt of that payment, and here's the net amount, and this net amount is expected to be deposited into your business checking account on this date, and it's the next day for a credit card payment. It's 1 to 5 days if they chose to do pay by ACH or checking account into QuickBooks Payments. So anyway, it's a different process. And so there's no place other than my P&L statement. But my P&L statement shows that I've received this money. But the P&L statement shows that I've received the full amount, and it doesn't actually show the fee. But that I'm being told by the AI tools, both from Intuit and also ChatGPT, that it won't show, the P&L won't show the actual expense of the payment processing fee until the deposit is made. And it's not something that I initiate. It does it automatically. And it's like, oh my gosh, my brain is going to break. I am such a control freak when it comes to every cent being tracked. And I'm supposed to just trust that this is, and of course I'm going to trust it, and it's going to work out. But anyway, this is something that caught my attention, and I'm thrilled that I am going in and finding this new opportunity. There have been a number of times when I wanted to send somebody an invoice or something like that, and I used to go in and create an offer and then try to track everything so that it gets tracked in my, dashboard of Kajabi. And that's not as important to me today. And one of the things that I learned, and not that this is a big deal, but Kajabi charges 2.99% plus 30 cents per transaction, whereas with QuickBooks, it's just 2.99%. So, wow, I saved 30 cents. Anyway, that's not a big deal. But it is something that I did notice. There's differences there, and I'm like, And then I saw that QuickBooks also has recurring payments. And so even if I didn't have Stripe, if I didn't have Kajabi, there are other ways to do this. And anybody who has any QuickBooks Online account, you can do invoices and you can do recurring subscriptions as well. And I think there is a fee on top of the 2.99% in the subscriptions, but it's still just like the other one. It's a very small fee. Anyway, payment options. We are so, I think sometimes we take for granted just how easy it is to do an online business, to receive payments today compared to the way it was before. I mean, you could be bringing in debit cards and credit cards. You can use Stripe, PayPal, Square. You can use Venmo, Cash App. You can do Zelle bank transfers, ACH, direct wire transfers. Oh, man. Invoicing platforms out there, QuickBooks Online, FreshBooks, PayPal has invoicing, Stripe has invoicing. You could do subscriptions and recurring billing today without all of these really weird third-party solutions that you have to pay additional monthly fees for. It really is awesome. And even if you were to do like e-commerce, so whether if you had digital ebooks or digital products or even physical products, there's just so many tools. Anyway. And one I haven't done, but even today, you can use what are called buy now, pay later options. And so there are certain of these online invoicing softwares that allow you to process payments through, I think, companies called Affirm and Klarna and Afterpay. And those I've never played around with, but that basically what's happening is they agree to some sort of payments, and of course, I'm sure there's some sort of interest on that or a fee for that's built into it that they earn because they're taking all the risk there. But the company then pays you in full, so your payments are taken care of. And as far as any extra payments that have gone unpaid that they agreed to, that's between them and that payment service. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to say, you know what, if you want to do payments, this is an offer. Again, I don't have any real opinion on the matter. It's just something that I haven't played around with myself. Cryptocurrency is something that people could pay with. I've not ever purchased any crypto just yet. Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the stable coins or anything like that. I haven't dabbled in that world at all. But it is a world out there, and it's another opportunity, I guess. The next topic that has my attention this week are e-ink devices. I have been talking about e-ink e-readers for years, and it is still an obsession of mine. And those who already know me, I have a Kindle graveyard, which I had at one time bought every member of our family of 5 a Kindle Touch years ago. Before that Kindle Touch, I had already had like 3 other prior versions of the Kindle before that. And I've had pretty much every version of the Kindle since, with the exception of the Kindle Scribes. Today, I have given my Kindle Oasis to my youngest daughter, McKenna, and I recently gave my Kindle Paperwhite Signature Edition to my daughter, Megan. So those are 2 Kindles that are really nice Kindles that I no longer have active use of anymore. That's okay. They're getting great use out of those devices. I still have an old Kindle Voyage device that still works. I've replaced the battery in it twice now, but even those replacement batteries have gotten to the place where they only hold a charge for about 3 to 5 days. And it's pretty much something that I just need to keep on the charger. It still has that micro USB, and I keep it on my bedside just in case I don't have one of my other e-reading devices with me. I have a Kindle Color Soft. It's my favorite Kindle so far. And of course, I've got the Kindle app on every iOS device that I own. And then I have the Kindle app on 2 other Android e-ink devices. One is called the Onyx Book Page, and it's a 7-inch black and white ebook reader. I really like it. The other is the Onyx Books Go Color 7, which is exactly the same as far as looks are concerned as the Onyx Books Page 7, which is black and white, but this one is, of course, color. And even though these devices look exactly the same, they have the same form factor, the UI is a bit different. And I must say that the Kindle app from Android on the Books Color 7, it is wonky. I've never been able to get it to be exactly the way that I want it. And also with the recent firmware update that I should not have updated to, it turned off the text-to-speech functionality. And so that was frustrating. But anyway, recently I've been seeing a bunch of people talk about the XT e-ink X4. And this is a little tiny e-ink e-reader. Its height is only 4.5 inches. It's less than 3 inches wide, and the thickness is less than 1/4 of an inch. It only weighs 74 grams. And I happen to have an iPhone 16 Pro Max iPhone with a case on it. And it is designed to be so thin, so small, and so, thin on the wide side that it's got a MagSafe on it. It will actually magnetize onto the back of my phone, and it's not a whole lot thicker than the camera bump on the case of my phone. The idea is that, man, I would love, it doesn't have a touch screen. It doesn't have the ability to do text to speech. It's not an Android device. It does not have a backlight. But what it does have is the ability to have an e-ink device in my pants pocket everywhere I go. And of course, it's got buttons for the moving the pages back and forth and all this other stuff. And I've heard the built-in software from the manufacturer is terrible, but you can flash the firmware to something that's community built as an open source project. And I can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head. Actually, I can tell you right now because I can click here and it will tell me what I need to do as soon as it gets here. Let's see here. Hardware, where is this? I can't see the name of it right now. Price, hardware, stock software, retro, firmware, Crosspoint. All right, so there is a Crosspoint software that you can actually put on here instead. It's community. It's a community project, and I hear it's very good. You can load up EPUBs on there. And I have EPUB versions of all of my books that I've purchased. And I'm not going to go into detail on how I got all of that, but let's just say that's a project in and of itself to take all your DRM off of your purchased books so that you can put them on other devices. Because these books, Onyx devices that I have, they have something called the Neo Reader, and it is a far superior experience on those devices to read EPUBs compared to using a iPhone or a phone or tablet version of the Amazon Kindle app on an e-ink device. So anyway, it's a whole project, and I was able to convert my own whole library over. Today, by the way, it's very challenging to get KFX files, which is what Amazon has gone to. I have not been able to currently take the DRM off of a current Kindle book purchase. But that's okay, because I have decided that, if I'm going to buy a book today, I'm probably going to buy it off the Kobo store. And then there is software that makes it relatively easy to remove that DRM. And then take that and convert it over to an EPUB. And then I can actually put that Kobo book, convert it over to EPUB. I can put it on my Onyx Books devices. I can upload it and do the Send to Kindle app, and it's available in my library as an EPUB on all of my devices, such as my iOS devices, the Android or the Amazon Kindle app, and also my EPUBs show up perfectly fine on my Kindle devices. The only thing I did notice just recently was I chose to use the EPUB version of a book that I'm reading. And the one thing that I notice is that it no longer gives me the amount of time left in the chapter that I'm reading. So I was looking and it says time left in current chapter. And it said 3 hours and 37 minutes. And then I clicked it once and it said time left in book, 3 hours and 37 minutes. It was exactly the same. And so basically, I no longer, if I'm using an EPUB in the Kindle app or on my Kindle, it's not going to give me an accurate reading of the end of that particular chapter because it doesn't see it the same way as a Kindle file. with that being said, I never really, well, actually, no, I used that a lot. Man, I really still to this day wish I could actually create my own Kindle. And I hate DRM, and I hate the fact that we can't just be trusted to do things, but I understand. It is what it is. But this is something that has captured my attention lately, and it happens to be the XT E-Ink X4 device, this little tiny e-ink reader. Think about that, 4.5 inches by 2.25 inches, and only 1/4 inch thick. I can't wait for it to get here. It should be here probably in about a week to 10 days. I think it's coming from China. It was $77 after shipping. And so anyway, yeah, that's going to be fun. The last thing that's on my list is developing my own software. I've been hearing people talk about vibe coding for a while now. I kind of ignored it because I'm like, maybe I'm just not, I've got too many other irons in the fire. There are too many projects for me to be working on. But I did subscribe to my friend Michael Hyatt's AI Insider Plus subscription. He basically has a newsletter called AI Business Insider. It is AI news and updates related to people who are entrepreneurs. And every email newsletter has been spot on, exactly the kind of stuff that I would be interested in as it relates to AI. And he also has these implementation toolkits where he's developed some very advanced custom GPTs, for example, and he gives you step-by-step processes on how to do exactly these things he's talking about in the newsletter. And it's a total no-brainer. Just follow these steps and you've got it. Well, one of them was develop your own software. And then he hosted a live AI Insider call. It was a workshop that he hosted. And I'm like, okay, I thought of 3 different ideas of software that I would like to create if I was going to vibe code my own software. I won't go into all of the details of what those software tools are, but he showed a application that he has vibe coded in a system called Replit. Replit, I think is what it's called. Replit.com. And he showed that you really don't have to know anything about coding at all. And sure enough, I went in. This software is only I think it's $25 a month if you're paying monthly, or $20 a month if you decide to pay annually. And then you get a certain number of credits and all this other stuff. So it could end up costing you more depending on how much you're using the system and how complex of an app you're trying to build. But I will tell you this. I've played with it for just over 1 hour, and I already have developed my first app for, I'll just tell you the idea of this software. It is, you log in, create an account, you log in, and it says, hey, give me some RSS feeds of some podcasts. And so you go in and you put in an RSS feed and you hit add it. And then it gives you your library. And that library basically just shows you a grid of podcast artwork for each podcast that you're subscribed to. It's a podcast subscription app, right? However, and by the way, that's already built. And then when you click on the podcast artwork in the grid, that takes you into a listing of all of the episodes that are in the RSS feed. And then you click on that one of those episodes and it opens up a player, and it's a beautiful looking, very nice UI of a web player. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And so the idea that's as far as I've gotten so far. And I had to create user accounts, and it went in the background, create a database for those user accounts. I had to create an admin dashboard and all this other stuff. And when I say I had to, I have no idea how to do any of that stuff. I just did a chat code or a chat message back and forth with this Replit software, and it's doing everything for me in the background. And supposedly, or not supposedly, it's not supposed. Michael showed me his. He actually created a paid software that people can sign up for, and it charges their Stripe account on a monthly basis. I mean, he's really gone down the road on an app that he's built, and he's just showing us how he's building the software. And I'm like, wow. So my idea is that I'm not just building a podcast subscription tool, but instead what will happen is eventually, and I've just played it with 2 hours, and I've already, it's like, this is so mind-blowing. It even has a landing page and all this other stuff for new users. And anyway, the idea is that I want to be able to click on an episode, and it will have the ability to download the MP3 file directly. So it'll just give me that ability to download any episode. Just click this button and it'll initiate a download. Another thing, I can click a button and it will automatically create a transcript for that episode. I can click a button that says summarize, and then that summary will pop up and it'll give me a 1-paragraph summary of the overall essence of the podcast, just like a big picture view of what the episode is about. Then a detailed summary, which will have a bullet point or a headline listing summary of every topic, every insight, with a short bullet point list of descriptions of what was said about each of those things. Then below that, it's going to have it'll have a list of resources and or links that were mentioned in the episode that are either worth checking out or at least were mentioned in the episode. And then after that, it will automatically have a list of potential action items that could be taken based upon what this episode proposed or had a premise or things to do. And then below that, it could actually give me a write-out, a summary of other things that I wanted to do automatically, such as, say, it could draft an email to the host of the show. And that email will say, hey, I just want to say thank you so much for episode such and such, titled such and such. This was so powerful. My favorite takeaways were this, this, and this. And I could actually choose which of those things it was. And it goes into the draft of the email. And then, and of course, there are people who are doing this terrible thing where it's like, hey, I've got a podcast pitch for my guest, a friend of mine who wants to be a guest on your show or whatever. It's like, my client wants to be a guest on your show. And they're kind of already doing this kind of thing, but this is not what I'm going to be using it for. This is more along the lines of my peers and my friends and the podcasters that I'm subscribed to. I want to be able to say, you know what, I really did go through and this episode was powerful. Also, I'm going to make it to where each of those items, it will deep link into that place in the episode where it talked about those things. I'm really excited about what this software will be able to do. But more than anything, anytime I find an episode that I love, I want to be able to do this, and I want to be able to email the host of that show a thank you message that it will give me as a draft, but then I can personalize and maybe even send right from the app. I don't know, or at least copy and paste into my email. The other thing is that all of that summary information, I want the ability to just click a button that says copy, and then I can paste that via Markdown into my Notion journal or a Notion note database. I am super excited, and maybe I might even have it to where any episode that I've ever done this on, I actually create a database in Notion that stores all of that. All of this can be coded inside of this program called Replit, and it's pretty fantastic. And that's just one idea of one software tool that I will build, and I've got ideas for 2 or 3 others. And I'm currently in the process of dabbling with this to see if this is really possible. It's way more possible than I had thought previously for me. I don't know. Maybe one day I will have my own software tools that people can subscribe to if they're interested in also doing this. But I'm building it for me for now. So there you go. That's my episode this week. Another one right up to the deadline, if you will. Boy, I'm anticipating getting ahead of things again. Maybe even, no, I don't know about I could batch process the podcast answer, man. We'll see. Thank you so much for tuning in. It really means a lot to me to hear from you. If you are resonating with these episodes, I'd love to hear it. My email address, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. By the way, I want you to know that the Next Level Mastermind is coming back. In fact, we are having our first meeting back for the Next Level Mastermind in 2026. Is going to be on Tuesday, February 3rd. I think that is the 3rd, isn't it? Just check here real quick. Yep, Tuesday, February 3rd. We meet from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time every week. If you are on the entrepreneurial path, you feel lonely, overwhelmed, trying to do everything on your own, you don't have anybody else to bounce ideas off of, to get feedback from, people who are out there doing exciting things, introducing you to tools and resources that you never knew existed. That's exactly what the Next Level Mastermind is about. If you are interested, email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Podcast. It's a man.